Would everyone rise and join me in Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our microphones don't work. This one doesn't. You'll have to just shut up. I have to use my well-modulated radio voice.
Okay, would you proceed with the roll call, please?
Chair Lowry,
Here.
Vice Chair Drobish,
Here.
Member Friend,
Here.
Member List,
Here.
Member Russell.
Here.
Next item is the consent calendar. I think we need to do a little housekeeping work on the minutes from last night, last week, I beg your pardon, last meeting.
Yes, I'm going to request to pull the draft minutes from September 2nd regular meeting to make 2 amendments before approval by the Planning Commission. First, I would like to amend the report of the closed session to include City Attorney Driscoll's announcement at 6:08 p.m. Secondly, I'd like to amend the report of action taken for item 7.1, the Western Slope Boys and Girls Club, to include the amendment within the text and underlined for clarification. The revised draft minutes will be completed and ready for approval by the next regular meeting on October 7th.
Move to adopt agenda? Or consent?
Second.
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any communications from staff members?
None from staff.
Thank you. Well, it moves us right into item 7.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Did
Certainly.
we skip item 5, items of interest to the public?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
So rolling back to item 5. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter not on the agenda that was in the subject matter jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. State law prohibits the commission from acting on items not listed on the agenda, except by special action of the Planning Commission under specified circumstances. The chair reserves the right to limit the speaker's time to 3 minutes. The chair will recognize the speaker and ask that they state their name for the record. Personal attacks on individuals or comments which are slanderous or which may invade an individual privacy, person's individual privacy, will not be tolerated. Would anybody like to come to the podium and speak to the Planning Commission upon any item not agendized tonight? Thank you. We'll now move back into our regular order of business. 669 B Street, conditional use permit, 2014-05. Request by property owners Westside Church International on behalf of the Hub Connection for a conditional use permit to operate a teen center as an after-school program at the former Westside Church located at 669 B Street. The teen center would generally operate from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday as an after-school program. Programming would include life skills training such as job skills, resume prep, etc., career counseling, community service options, along with recreational and music-oriented activities. Music art outreach and motivational events are anticipated on occasional Friday nights. No exterior alteration of the residence is proposed. Now I turn it over to City Planner Painter for further elucidation.
Thank you, Chair Lowry. Yeah, the site is off B Street, as you mentioned. It sits on approximately 1 acre, and it's located approximately 200 feet west of the intersection of Coloma and B Street. The site contains 2 detached vacant buildings that are of pre-1950s construction. The main building is the former church sanctuary. It has a kitchen and dining area on the first floor. The second building, located to the rear of the site, is single-storied and contains the former church's offices and classrooms. The site is located adjacent to, again I said adjacent to, the Coloma Spring Streets Historic Residential District. The zoning for the site and the land use designation are business professional. Neither the church sanctuary building or the detached office classroom building are located on the city's historic resource inventory or the State Register of Historic Resources or the National Register of Historic Places. Site improvements include an asphalt driveway which provides access to the site from B Street, where there are approximately 15 parking spaces located. Curb, gutter, and sidewalk exist along the B Street's frontage of the site. The site is surrounded by residential uses, a cemetery, a drug and alcohol counseling center, as well as a church. In November of last year, the Commission considered a zoning interpretation by the Hub Connection, asking if a teen center use is consistent with the BP, or Business Professional Zone. The Commission acted in November and determined that the teen center use, or a teen center use, is a conditional use within the BP zone. Conditional uses that require conditional use permits in our code are regulated under Section 10.3.3 and the procedures under Section 10.3.6. The Commission has the authority under these code sections to make determinations regarding conditional use permit requests. In reviewing a conditional use permit project, the Commission must find and judge that the proposal is consistent with required findings for conditional uses. The Commission must find that the use is deemed essential or desirable to the public convenience or welfare, is in harmony with the elements and objectives of the city's general plan, and is not detrimental to surrounding properties. This project was submitted to the Historical Advisory Committee on August 21st of this year for its recommendation to the Commission. As this project, as I mentioned, is a discretionary conditional use permit project that is located within 300 feet of the historic district I mentioned previously. The Historical Advisory Committee did recommend the Planning Commission approve the project as it was submitted to them, as the request would not affect the integrity of historic resources in the project's vicinity. Staff's analysis involved several items that included parking for the proposed use, noise generated by the use, as well as consistency with the city's development guide, and a California Environmental Quality Act environmental review. Parking for the proposed use would be provided, as I mentioned, on site in a paved area that is adjacent to the 2 existing buildings. Approximately 15 parking spaces exist. Parking stall striping is evident, but it is faded. There is no parking accessible striped stalls for the disabled. City parking regulations do not include a category for a teen center use, but as the Commission is aware, at their last meeting they did consider a very similar use, the Boys and Girls Club, where staff utilized the Institute of Transportation Engineers parking generation land use category of recreational community center to determine the parking requirements for such a use. The average parking ratio for a community center is 3.2 stalls per 1,000 square feet of gross floor area. Now, per the county's assessor records, the former church and classroom have a gross floor area of approximately 6,500 square feet. Parking generation, again, for that particular size structure or structures would therefore require 21 spaces. The facility would appear to have 6 fewer spaces than would the average recreational community center as analyzed under the Institute of Transportation Engineers. In staff's analysis of this shortfall of parking stalls. It appears from the applicant's narrative as well as staff's personal experience with this particular location and site, due to its proximity to El Dorado High School, it is highly likely that many users will walk to the site or travel to the site by bicycle, while others will be picked up by parents or other family members. Therefore, 15 parking spaces appear adequate to accommodate the proposed use, primarily due to really its after-school component, which is 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. The applicant does propose to have evening activities that could involve music or other functions, lectures, etc., which could trigger additional parking needs. However, it's staff's opinion that there is adequate parking off-site along B Street, and adjoining uses utilize that capacity on B Street, such as the Sequoia, as well as the New Wine Church. Staff has conditioned the request requiring the applicant to restripe and maintain on-site parking spaces that are specific to city standards for dimensions. Also, staff has conditioned the project to stripe at least one stall, be striped and maintained for disabled users. The project site is located within a few hundred feet of residential uses, located on B Street, Coloma Street, and Molly Lane, which is located to the northwest of the site. It is these residential uses that would appear to be most affected by any noise that might be generated at this location, especially in the evening hours. And staff did look at how this body conditioned the Sequoia restaurant back in the early 2000s, and they did regulate and restrict prohibiting noise generating activities, including amplified music sound after 10:30. Staff thought it appropriate to also condition it similarly for this particular request. So staff has added that as a condition of approval. Staff's evaluation of the request in conformance with the development guide. The development guide, as the commission is aware, having gone through staff's periodic updates here that we've been bringing back before you, they provide a general site improvement guidelines for parking facilities, including bicycle racks and the screening of mechanical equipment, such as heating and air conditioning units and condensers, propane tanks, etc., which would require them to be screened from public view. In previous years, the former church had erected a wood fence that screened the rear or the side yard, in this case, of the site, where there is a ground-mounted heating and air equipment, as well as a propane tank, which is on the west side of the property. These panels of this fence were removed and were not replaced. It appears that these panels are leaning up against the back part of the sanctuary building, and consistent with the development guide, staff has conditioned the request to screen and maintain screening of this mechanical equipment, the heating and air units, the propane tank, etc. Also, it is anticipated that some users of the site will come by bicycle. The site currently does not have a bicycle rack, and the development guide again does consider this as a potential opportunity for including that type of facility for this teen center, and staff has conditioned the request to provide and maintain a bicycle rack for the facility users. In terms of environmental analysis, staff concluded that this request is within the guidelines of a Class 32 infill development project, categorical exemption from the California Environmental Quality Act guidelines. And it meets these project conditions in that it is consistent with the general plan, the zoning ordinance, and regulations as conditioned. The proposed development occurs within the city limits on a project site of approximately 1.14 acres, which is less than the 5-acre maximum provided under the Class 32 conditions. The project site has no value as habitat for endangered, rare, or threatened species, and the site has been previously developed with an existing building, parking area, etc. As conditioned, the approval of the project would not result in any significant effects related to traffic, noise, air quality, water quality, etc. Also, water, sanitary sewer, electrical utilities, and solid waste disposal all serve the project site. Staff enthusiastically supports the request, as it appears from public sentiment that the use is needed for this age group within our community. The request, therefore, is consistent with Goal E of the general plan, land use element, in that it will provide a conveniently located institutional use where very few local resources of this type are available. The request as conditioned would not materially be detrimental to the public health and safety within the project's vicinity, in that it would meet city development standards and guidelines. Staff therefore recommends the Planning Commission take the action of adopting staff's report as part of the public record, make the findings of fact A through E on page 7 of staff's report regarding conditional use permit 2014-05, and approve that conditional use permit with the conditions of approval 1 through 11 on page 8 of staff's report. The applicant and others are in the audience this evening who I'm sure would like to discuss and introduce their project to you. That concludes my report, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well, what I propose we do going forward and without objection, suggests that we open the hearing for public comment, take that public comment. Once public comment is closed, the commission members discuss it, pose questions if needed to staff, and if questions need to go back out to those who participated in the public comment, we would have the option to do that as well. Is that satisfactory? Okay, well, with that, we'll open up the public hearing, and anyone here who would like to speak to the matter of this conditional use permit is most welcome to come forward.
I'm sorry, Tom. How do we get the microphone on? Is that up here at the dais? The more you overthink the plumbing, the easier it is to stop at the drain. Or he's got to go the Wizard of Oz area. Can you tap that microphone? No? Check, check, 1, 2, check, check. Nope.
Hello?
There you go. Cone drop.
So my name is Tanya Moran. I work for Marshall Foundation, which is the fundraising arm of Marshall Hospital. I was happy to accept the position as treasurer for the hub. I think this is an exciting program. I've been thinking about a teen center and have other conversations with my friends about it. And I would really appreciate it if you would consider this and approve this request. I think it's a great thing. We have great ideas. We have a lot of great helpers that are coming forward in the community that want to participate in this program. So I would encourage your support. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Amy Buchanan. I'm the founder and executive director of the Hub Connection Incorporated. And I just want to say thank you for the recommendations that are listed in here regarding this parking lot. There's lighting concern that we have. I don't know if that was addressed in here or not. And the suggestion of the bike rack. We are fully aware that the parking lot needs to be striped, and we are actually working on receiving, donations from the community to obtain that. So before we open to the public and actually, have our grand opening and begin serving teens, we are going to address these issues. So I just want to put your mind at ease on that we are fully aware and want to continue to have a positive, collaborative relationship with the city and enjoy and respect any recommendations that you do have, and we'll be happy to address any concerns. So we are fully aware, and we are working on them already. We wanted to try and have the parking lot done actually before this hearing so we could kind of show it off to you guys, but it didn't happen. So anyway, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple of questions. Are you the representative then for the project who questions should be directed to? Is there someone else? Your name is on our staff report as the applicant representative. I just want to know who to direct questions to.
Yes, that would be me.
I had just a couple of questions then, if
Okay.
I might. First of all, there's a lot to be excited about with this project. And in particular, not only the time frame of operation, but also its proximity to the high school, and even to Markham, I think is really excellent. The Planning Commission has to evaluate that this is deemed an essential or desirable to the public convenience or welfare. I don't think there's any issue with that. We also have to evaluate the harmony with the elements and objectives of the city's general plan, and I don't have any issues with that. And we have to evaluate that it's not detrimental to the surrounding properties. And on face value, I don't think there's an issue with that. However, there are two things I think that could come up, and I would just like your clarification on them. One, can you provide any information as to the staffing oversight? I assume it's not just going to be a building open for high school kids from 3 to 6 without supervision, and they can just go crazy. So if you could give us some sense as to what the staffing pattern is.
At this point in time, there'll be volunteers. Being a social worker, I'm, bound to ethics and to a standard of excellence, and so I'm going to carry that into this project. And if the children were smaller, if the teens were younger, usually title code would say for every 6 kids, you need to have 1 adult. It's not that confined when it becomes teenagers, especially when they're 18, 17, 18, that kind of thing. But I am going to still hold a strict staffing ratio. So, at this point in time, like let's pretend we had this ready to go and we could open tomorrow. Tomorrow is the grand opening. The following school week we would start. If I was able to open today, I'd have a soft open. I'd open Tuesdays and Thursdays. I'd start with the Tech Hub program, the Snack Shack. I don't know how aware of the details of those programs you are, but if you have questions, I can answer them. That being homework help, life skill classes, there's a lot that goes into the tutoring the Tech Hub program. But, there's going to be staff on site that's going to do teaching. There's going to be a greeter when they come in. They have to check in. They have to register. We have emergency card information. We'll have to have parents sign or guardianship sign so that there's clear communication, rules are adhered to. So it's difficult to answer your question because I can't say, well, I know for sure I'm going to have 30 kids, so therefore I'm going to have 5 volunteers. But I definitely am going to have volunteers there that are going to equal to the need of the teens, if that makes sense.
Could you just speak briefly about the qualifications of staff? I mean, who are the staff and what?
It's a mirage at this point in time. It's multifaceted. So the background checks will be done. That's a mandatory. Applications will be completed. There'll be a training prior that will be conducted by myself and a team that's based in Sacramento that does youth training, youth volunteer training. As we get farther along, I'm planning to secure interns from the social work program at Sac State and from the human service program at Folsom Lake who get college credit and need, in order to get their degree or pass their course, they have to serve the community. They have to be, working in a welfare type project to obtain their grade and their hours towards social work. So professional end to someone who's retired that has a ton of wisdom and skill in, the specific need that we have for a specific program that has the right heart, the right intent, the right attitude that can work well with the population. So I don't know if I'm answering.
Is there a minimum age for a staff member supervising technically children?
Right. I would say 18 at this point, depending upon what the program is.
So that's not an established policy per se?
No, it's not at this time.
Okay. Then the other...
But they would need to be an adult, and depending upon the program, so like if I have a program director, they're going to be overseeing the volunteers that are there. So it's kind of hard to put in, I don't want to just say, 24 and up, but I definitely know they need to be an adult at this point in time.
Okay, so at least 18.
Right.
We had confidence that they'll be at least 18 years of age.
Right.
Okay. Then the other issue, there is a restriction in terms of how late you can go in terms of amplified music, and it's a similar condition that we placed on the Sequoia restaurant. Of course, the Sequoia restaurant had hours anticipated to be open late. In the application and in the staff report, it says the hours for this are 3 to 6, which would never create a problem. However, it's clear to me that it's not necessarily going to be just 3 to 6, that there is obviously some planning for later night activities, particularly on a Friday night. First of all, is it Monday through Friday only? Or is it also on Saturday and or Sunday?
Okay, so after-school programming is Monday through Friday.
Okay.
Because it's after school.
Right.
And then Friday evenings, at this point in time, we're estimating one every 3 months. Our first year that we're open. Our second year, we're going to strive to do one Friday night a month. And I don't know.
But it could be, it could be more. There's no conditional restriction on the frequency of at least the Friday nights. In fact, there's no conditional restriction on any night as long as it doesn't go past 10:30. And I'm just, I think for transparency, just trying to get
a growth type.
Growth,
Yeah.
just, again, going back to can't be detrimental to the surrounding properties.
Right.
I'm not concerned about what the structure looks
Right.
like. Certainly concerned about the activity
Right.
there.
So at this point in time, I do not foresee there being I don't foresee us ever being there past 10:30. If we're there, we're cleaning up, there's not going to be an amplified noise issue past 10:30 ever on a Friday night, Saturday night, or Sunday night, or, any given night. For the future, and I don't know if I should be speaking to this, so forgive me if I'm out of line here. We're trying to work on some kind of like homework, dinner, after school type issue. We don't have that written down anywhere, and I'm speaking to it just to say, future, we may stay open past 6, we may stay open until 7 2 days a week, because we're going to offer dinner and homework and charge parents for that. But we're going to be meeting a need in the community, because parents that are coming from down the hill are going to know that their kid is fed, their teen is fed, they've got their homework help, they've chilled out, they're done, they're going to be able to pick them up and go home and connect and do whatever they do at home and start the new day the next day. So I don't know how constringent you guys are going to be on us if we have to toe that line to 6 and that's it. So if there needs to be something ironed out, let's do that if we can.
I just think it's important, and I
Okay.
think you've kind of alluded to it, and I'll
Right.
yield the microphone to my fellow commissioners. I think what's important to understand is that technically you could have activities, and I'm not challenging the activities,
Okay.
don't misunderstand.
Okay.
That you really could have activities going up to 10:30, 7 nights a week. That's a possibility, just depending upon what community needs there are and what
Right.
kind of growth potential you have. And so that the application really isn't structured to be limited to the hours of 3 to 6.
Okay.
That's the primary target that you're starting
Right.
with, but
Right.
certainly as the program grows and is successful, and we would hope that it would be, and it's filling an important need, that it really could go beyond that, and it could go beyond that frequently, just like the restaurant does. I think that's really
Okay.
where I was kind to go with
Yeah.
it. So.
I don't know how to really, lay to rest any concerns you have as far as noise. I just honestly do not see there being amplified noise ever past 10:30. I think, in fact, isn't curfew 10 at this time? So even just beyond, just because curfew is at 10, we want to be, we're going to model obeying laws, following structure. It's a part of life, whether, regardless of how rebellious you want to be at, 16, 17, in order to be part of that maturity is realizing that, there's structure and, it goes well for you in life if you can kind of fall in line and still maintain who you are in society, but yet obey the laws of the land. And, just the fact that curfew is at 10, let alone, is going to cap what we do, because we're going to want those kids, back at home and not at our facility past curfew.
First, I'd like to say I applaud you for what you're trying to do. I think that's great.
Thank you.
Do you have a governing board, or are you doing this on your own?
I have a governing board. We're a 501c3 nonprofit with the state of California. In order to have a nonprofit in the state of California, you do have to have an acting board.
Okay.
So.
And can you give us some insight to who's on your board at this time?
I can. I have Tanya Moran, who's my treasurer. I have Tim Thompson, who's a board member. I have Kelly Anderson, and she's my secretary. Mark Adams. I have Teresa Keith, who's here this evening, who's a board member, and Dylan O'Reilly, who's my youth advisor board member.
What's your relationship with the Westside Church? Is this an outreach of the Westside Church, or are you just using their facilities? What's
So, on a personal level, I attend church there.
Okay.
On as far as
Nothing
this,
wrong with that.
Okay, I'm just being honest. I'm a very honest person. At least I strive to be. So, as far as this is concerned, though, this is founded as a public entity, so it is not faith-based.
Okay.
This will not be a glorified youth group. This will
Okay.
be open to the public. And even though I'm a woman of faith, I have no curriculum that's going to take a Bible and whap it over people's heads. I plan to just shine the light and love folks, and meet them in their need. So the relationship is they gave us the building free for a year. So we have a working lease. And after this hearing, sorry about that. After this hearing, sometime at the end of the month, we'll go back into lease agreement with them. So it's a working relationship. They are supportive in every way that they can be. So it's not a direct, what did you say, mission? It's not a direct
Outreach.
Outreach, thank you. It's not a direct outreach of Westside Church, but it's an outreach that they support.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I thank you too for what you're undertaking. It's needed by the community.
Thank you.
And I kind of had concerns about the hours. I was thinking maybe 10 might be better for the amplified sound, but condition 3 that's in here that makes me feel better that in the future, if there is a problem, we can bring it back and address any problems that neighbors might have or what have you. So
Okay.
I feel good about that. I think you're going to be a great neighbor to everyone around. Just a question, thinking about the building next door, the former mortuary, and the problems it's having. Does your building have an alarm?
I really don't want to say on
Yeah,
record
no,
what
or
we have.
just something to think about,
But
and then-
yes, we have some security, and we're also in communication with the owner of that location as well, because we'd like to also obtain that. We foresee that our growth is going to that's going to be our biggest problem, is that we're going to outgrow our facility. So based on that, we're actually trying to do some working relationship with the owner of that, I want to say, monstrosity, just because of the way, from our view, from our parking lot, it's horrid what that location looks like. And I happen to believe there's people actually living in that location. So it's a risk for what we're going to do, and I'd like to come up with a solution for that as well. And so we're actually in the middle of negotiations with that property owner right now to at least maintain the outside of the structure, begin that working relationship, and in hopes, obviously, obtain that site as well, so that our growth issue will not be an issue.
Excellent.
What a great haunted house.
That was,
Yeah, we've been talking about that. We're trying to get together and see if we can try and pull off a Fright Fest or something here since October's coming, but.
that was one of my questions is, could you speak to the neighbor and ask to have maintenance
Yes,
on
we're actually in working relations right now with him, with the
Excellent.
owner. They're based in Houston. It's like a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate, so it's, you know, it's not like I can just call him up on any given day. It's hard to get a hold of them. It's by email, you know, so it's difficult, but we're doing it. We are in, you know, communication with them, so.
Well, I just want to make it unanimous. I appreciate what it is you're going to all the effort to do here.
Thank you.
When you describe a community from the outside, you discuss amenities, and this is certainly an amenity for anyone considering living in Placerville, moving to Placerville. This project will do nothing but improve Placerville's reputation as a place to make your home, I believe.
Thank you.
When we discuss with staff, I do want to make sure that the language, the 3 to 6 p.m. language, doesn't end up becoming a stumbling block for the program's expansion. I don't know if this is written as a hard deadline.
No, the 3 to 6 was stated as stated by the applicant.
Okay.
As the typical hours of operation. It was not intended as staff's recommendation that those are the strict hours in which it would operate.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. And the last comment I would make is kind of ex officio here, and that is that I understand a lot of local funeral homes are being bought up by conglomerates, and this is apparently the case here. The owners is 2,000 miles away.
Exactly.
Be that as it may, I'm sure that city code in Placerville speaks to things called attractive nuisances, and we do have code enforcement people on city staff. So I think it's something you might want to ask city government about.
Okay.
That's all I have.
I'm trying to catch flies with honey at this point, so
Yeah.
I'm going to wait for the vinegar.
Good luck with that.
Okay.
Okay, so Mike has another question.
You gotta be loving this. So don't take my persistent questioning as having problems with the project, but again, going back to transparency.
Okay.
There's, in our packet, there's a little bit of information about the hub connection.
Yes.
And so do you have other facilities that are being run similar to what you're proposing here? Other examples?
We do not, but we modeled a lot of our ideas and our framework from the Collins Teen Center in West Sacramento. I met with Gary Fox several times. They don't have the program ideas because it's urban, it's in West Sacramento. They meet their main resource that they provide for the community is a meal after school, and that's usually the only meal that half the people that show up get for the day. So there's, they have a different bend, I guess I could say. So but just the rules, the volunteering, the structure of, program guide, those kind of things. A lot of what you see there came from a survey that I did at El Dorado High School, and what the teens they perceive. I had a conversation with Matthew Barnes. He was very emphatical about photography. They apparently the photography classes fill up, and there's not enough. He can never meet the need for photography. So that's one of the reasons why we would like to offer that after school. So that's pretty much how it came about, just by surveying the teens, looking at what is viable, what we have, what we don't have. We don't want to repeat. We don't want to step on anyone else's toes in the community. If something else is going on, if the Boys and Girls Club are offering something, we're not going to try and take from them and repeat resources. We want to be able to complement
Sure.
what other entities are doing.
I mean, some of these items here, like the art show and motivational speakers and poetry slam, you know, and this says all Friday night, but again, going back to the previous discussion, these really could happen anytime depending upon what the need is and how the market grows. But then we get something like Battle of the Bands, and then that gets to be a little bit more of a potential for noise and whatnot. So I'm just, again, just bringing these items out for the commission to consider, you know, as we look at approval of the project.
Okay. So I would just encourage you that the amount of work it takes to do a Battle of the Bands or a club night, or, you know, maybe not so much the open mic, but definitely the Battle of the Bands, the club night, those kind of things, the amount of planning and work that takes, it's not going to happen on a weekday. I can tell you that right now. It's unless you're so connected in the music world and you have nothing going on or whatever, I don't know. But I don't know really what teenager has the time with the homework load and everything, the sports and everything else that they're involved in, to be able to come out and stay late on a weekday night, to be able to come to that or to actually participate and play in that. So we're really going to stick to the Friday night for those types of things, because that's a whole other, pool of volunteers. I mean, you have to have security, you have to have volunteers that aren't doing the after school stuff. And so that's why it's listed under Friday night, because it needs to be separate. I see what your concern is, though. Like, if we have the music studio up after school, is there going to be amplified sound till, late in the hours? Again, all I can say right now is to give you my word that we're going to, respect what the guidelines are. We're going to respect what the curfew is, and we're going to adhere to that. So.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
So I guess this brings us back to, brings us back to the part where I ask if there's any other input
Exactly.
from the public.
I'm Joyce Madari. I'm the direct neighbor, the live neighbor. So I'm directly across the street from them. And I think what really matters is who operates the center. So I'm very familiar with Amy, and I know she'll respect me. I know she'll respect the other neighbors. If a concern arises, I know she'll be very eager to resolve any issue that comes along. And I'm real confident that even though, we know the element, we know it's teenagers, we know there'll be issues, that they will be resolved as they come up.
Thank you very much. Great, please.
My name is Mike Keith Jr. My wife and I have been working with at-risk youth for the last 2 years in county. I'm also a Leadership Eldorado alumni, so I got to kind of see all the different aspects of the county, and hearing about this project since Amy's been starting it, it just sounds like a phenomenal thing. So I just really encourage you guys to move it forward, even if there are some sort of regulations, making sure that they're not, too loud on weeknights. I just think that the advantage that this is going to be to the kids is going to be phenomenal. I mean, it could get to the point to where 10 years from now, the guys that were at the hub are sitting in your guys' seats, which would be great. So thank you for your time. And again, I encourage you guys to move forward with this. Thanks.
Thanks for your input.
I'm gonna have this microphone when they pry it from my cold, dead hands.
Who else would like to speak to the issue? All are welcome.
My name is Michael Buchanan. I'm Amy's son. I've kind of been hearing about this ever since she was trying to start it up. So, being a teen myself in high school, I can say for myself that teens will definitely benefit from this. Even there just being food there, like a lot of teens are going to show up. So that's definitely not an issue. Yeah. So yeah, I would encourage you guys as well to move it forward any way you can, because it will definitely be beneficial to the community and to teens. So yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to come out here, and most especially for saying your mind to the Planning Commission. I appreciate that. Are there any others? I think no other takers. This closes the public hearing portion of this commission meeting. Would any of my fellow commissioners like to enter into discussion with staff on elements that were raised at any point in our conversation tonight?
Well, so there's no misunderstanding. I mean, I completely support the project. What I would ask the fellow commissioners to consider, though, it would be nice if the supervision staffing component were a little bit better defined, frankly. And perhaps that can be mitigated through condition 3, can always come back. We do have an obligation to the neighborhood itself. I think the presence of this facility might also mitigate and lessen the negative activity that's happening with the vacant building that we talked about earlier. I mean, there's a lot of positives to go on with this. At the same time, I think we have to still keep a very clear mind and make sure that we've covered, you know, all of the bases. So the staffing / supervision component, I thought, you know, it would have been nice to have had a little bit more definition with that, and then give some consideration if you want to treat the Friday and Saturday nights differently than the weeknights, because right now it technically is open-ended. And while the program is going to start out slow and it's going to start out small, I anticipate that it will be very, very successful and could get quite crowded, frankly. And particularly if they're planning to expand into adjacent buildings, you can see how it could have quite a substantial presence in the neighborhood. And our obligation really is to make sure that we're trying to consider that. So I just throw that out to my fellow commissioners for their consideration.
Sure, Lowry, I've got a comment, if I may.
By all means.
Okay. The comments made by Executive Director Amy Buchanan related to possible future expansion of this use. I want to make sure that it's clear in the record that the request is for 669 B Street, and any future expansion of this use to neighboring properties on separate legal titled locations will require a modification to this use permit or a brand new use permit, which would again allow a public hearing process for consideration of that expanded use. I just wanted to make sure that's clarified in the record.
I think that's a really important admonishment. I see the language runs with the land, so
yes, correct.
That to me that implies that we'd probably be looking at a new process.
That's correct.
Yeah, thanks. Would anybody else like to? Okay.
Staff question.
Sure. Here you go.
I have a staff question on the parking stall count and the requirement for a handicap space. How many stalls does a handicap space take up? Is it roughly 2 standard stalls?
Yeah, it's almost 15 feet wide when you consider the landing for, you know, the apparatus for some vehicles that have that. So yeah, I think it's 14 feet wide, which the typical stall is 8 to 9, to give you an idea from scale. The building code would, if you've got 25 or less stalls, you need one of those stalls needs to be disabled. So with this site not having any, then it would behoove this user and or operator to have a disabled stall. That opens up perhaps some other issues related to this building that, and I've mentioned this to Ms. Buchanan about it is not clear to me that the building meets federal ADA requirements for access. And that's not something that you have to concern yourself with conditions. That's the responsibility of the property owner at the time that Civil Rights Act was adopted. So it would behoove the church, since they own the property, to make sure that any accessible venue, whether it's, well, I know the back building does not have, there are stairs that go up to that building. The ramp leading up, lack of a better word, it's a ramp leading up to the sanctuary portion of the building. It looks just by eye that it might be too steep for current code requirements. So I just share that with you. They are aware of that, and they are operating, if this is granted, that it would be staff's strong suggestion that those issues be addressed as soon as possible, as there are people who advocate and sue businesses in operations like this all the time. And I wouldn't say that this particular use would be exempt from that type of lawsuit. So I'll stop speaking.
Does anyone on staff know if city code addresses noise hours specifically?
It doesn't.
Okay.
It's just it's a decency
Yep.
law, a general decency
Nuisance.
statement. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're disturbing the neighbors, really at any hour, theoretically it's a nuisance. It's typically, I think other jurisdictions might specify a particular time range. I don't believe there is such a provision in the code. But looking back on it, looking at the consistency with the use permit, as I mentioned in my staff report, consistent with the Sequoia, again, that 1030 is kind of a starting point, and I know Commissioner Friend talked about perhaps maybe modifying that, but clearly we wanted to be consistent. But staff would support any hour that you wish to, within reason, that you want to grant.
Okay, well, speaking for myself, I'm prepared to move the language as presented on page 7 at SEC in the documents before us. So if other members would like to modify any of this language, be delighted for them to do so and construct a motion.
So point of order, technically that wasn't a motion. That's just for our record keeping.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move the item. Let me see, I need to get the number. Because I have faith.
CUP 2014-05.
CUP 2014-05. I'll move the request for the CUP 2014-05, adopting the staff report as part of the public record, accepting the findings as presented. Oh, yeah, there it was right there in front of my face. Accept the findings as presented on page 7 with the conditions as specified in Roman numeral 3 on page 8, Planning Division 1 through 11.
Second.
May we have a roll call vote?
Chair Lowry,
Aye.
Vice Chair Drobish,
Aye.
Member Friend,
Yes.
Member List, Member Russell.
This has a 10-day appeal,
It does, yes.
just so the applicant knows what that means. Good luck. It is cold, no? Yeah, I don't know.
Okay, I believe that brings us to item 8. I think I can say that without risk of correction. Are there any matters from commissioners and staff? Okay.
I have a few things, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I just want to call to your attention, and copies of the flyer were handed out to each of the commissioners, but it's in regards to the Main Street repaving. And basically, there's going to be a community meeting. This is the first community meeting to assist the public with knowledge of the project. It's going to be from 6:30 p.m. to 8 p.m. on Thursday, September the 25th, and it's going to be here at Placerville Town Hall. And who should attend? Any building owners, business owners, and members of the community that may be interested and or affected by the Main Street repaving project. And basically, the main topics that will be discussed at a minimum would be the base project, which will include the roadway, utility, and pedestrian improvements involved in the project. We will be taking input from all attendees regarding the project and any fears or concerns. And we say fears, primarily we're looking at getting input from the public and the business owners in regards to the construction and how the construction will be carried out in terms of, will be it all night? Do we stagger it? Do we carry it on for, some particular season or during months? Basically, trying to coordinate so that we limit to the greatest extent the impact that we would have on the Main Street businesses and the associated events that they typically have. Another item I want to
Before you go on, look at your crystal ball a second. When do you anticipate that this project would get off the ground or would break ground?
We are looking at construction beginning in early spring of next year.
Next year, okay.
Yeah. At the last Planning Commission meeting, there was a request about just building permits in general, so we do have some statistics for you. These statistics are from January through August of 2014, and then we had a total of 270 permits issued, and of those 270, 2 were new single-family residential permits, 8 were single-family additions, 122 were single-family repairs, and repairs could be HVAC, re-roof, water heater, windows, siding, those kinds of improvements to a house. We didn't have any new commercial permits. We had 36 commercial TI, which are tenant improvements, and then we had 1 commercial addition. Any questions on those statistics? Okay, I'm going to brief the commission on the council actions at their last council meeting on September the 9th. There were a number of items that this commission had forwarded recommendations to the council for consideration. One of the items that the council considered was the recommendation regarding a zoning ordinance change of the Placerville's municipal code to allow for employee housing within the city. And the council continued that item to October 14th, basically to allow staff time to research what the intent of the state legislature is regarding farm labor housing versus employees in general, and further how we can regulate any of these uses that may be proposed within the city. The planning commission did recommend, I believe, 5-0 to, I think it was 5-0 to approve, to recommend approval to the city council. Another zoning ordinance change was a change of the code to allow for SROs, or what are single room occupancy units and facilities. The council did approve that change in the ordinance. I believe the only change that they made with regards to what was recommended was with the management of those facilities. There was a threshold of any facility of 25 or more would have on-site management. That was changed to 15. So they lowered the threshold, made it more sensitive to requiring on-site management of the facility. And then there was the change of the code in regards to supportive and transitional housing within the city's mixed-use zone districts that permit residential uses. And that one went through without much discussion, so that was approved by the council. And then the last one was the change to the R5 multifamily residential zone district. And that was basically to eliminate the ability within that zone to allow single-family detached residential units or single-family attached for that matter. It's basically a apartment zone district to allow the city to meet its housing element program. And it was somewhat controversial, of course, because it's basically permitting a 20 units per acre minimum and maximum. And it will be by right, so the city would have no discretion on that. So basically it would be just reviewed at more or less a staff level upon submittal of building permits.
My recollection is that made it consistent with state law.
Yes,
That
it
wasn't
was.
the city's necessarily their desire, but that's what the law is that right?
That's correct. That's what the law is. The city is being required by the state in order to meet the housing law, that it has an inventory of adequate zone lands that would permit 20 units per acre by right in order to meet an expected housing needs for low and very low income. It's not that the city is required to construct or build those units, or that if they were constructed, that they be affordable to low and very low, but that the lands are available should somebody come in, with funding or want to build affordable housing or something. That would be the appropriate zone district where they could probably achieve a density that then, from more of a market perspective, be affordable to low and very low. But it is not a mandate to do that. See if there's anything else. I think those are the items then I wanted to review the Planning Commission on council actions. Any questions on that?
We need an active volcano to get more land.
Floating islands. On the Main Street repaving meetings, I imagine there'll be notices on the city website, Facebook, press release in the Mountain Democrat, just to get as much information out to get as much attendance as possible.
The two documents provided for you tonight are linked to the main page of the city's website.
Nice.
Correct.
And then I was just wondering, since the Main Street Streetscape has already done so much design review and it's sitting there on a shelf, if a link to that might be available for people to see what's already been thought of, and they might save some time. Is it possible? It's a large document. It's got a lot of ideas in it.
Isn't it on our site? Right. Yeah, the city is redesigning its website, and so it is the goal of the city to have all of our documents available.
I noticed they used to be there, and now a lot I can't find, but I see things are moving around and being reworked. Does staff have any idea when the specific rezones to R5 might return? It was a property on Cedar Ravine and Adams Way, I believe.
We hope to continue working on those as quickly as possible. We're basically consulting with our legal staff on some legal issues regarding those rezones. Like we all know, and you've pointed out, it's very problematic for a city like Placerville with its varied topography and infrastructure constraints to be able to permit by right apartment developments at that density.
And we are up against a deadline to do it within 1 year of housing element adoption?
Yes, I believe that deadline is coming up this October.
Okay. And then just personally for me, I just wanted to send out a prayer to everyone in the line of all these fires across the state and everyone fighting them, and it's crazy. Did anyone hear what happened to Weed, California? There's a large part of it is just gone.
That was only 300 and some odd acres.
Yeah.
Just a fraction of what we have here, but I guess it was just a real density housing hillside thing.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers to those affected.
Yeah, that's really terrible to hear. I was just in the community of Weed just a month ago. So it's a nice little town.
Are there any further matters from commissioners and staff?
No,
Okay.
Thank you.
The meeting's adjourned.